In 1936, deep in the heart of Aomori, Japan, a man sat behind cold iron bars, wrongfully imprisoned. His name was Yoshie Shiratori. He wasn't just another convict. He was a man sentenced to death for a crime he never committed, forced into a confession under brutal torture. The guards saw him as nothing more than a caged animal. But what they didn't know was that Shiratori wasn't a man to be broken. How did this man manage to deceive everyone until they called him the prison wizard? Let's uncover the story. Welcome to Dark Secrets, where we uncover the strangest, most mysterious stories from around the world. Today we bring you the incredible tale of the most brilliant mind to ever set foot in a prison. A man so clever, they called him the prison magician. For months, Shiratori studied his surroundings. Every shift change, every blind spot, every weakness in the prison's design. Then, he discovered something. There was a 15-minute window between guard rotations. That was all he needed. Using nothing but a thin metal wire he had discreetly taken from a bucket handle in the prison bath, he worked tirelessly, picking the lock of his cell. His hands were trembling, both from the cold and the pressure. He could hear the faint voices of the guards just outside. The lock gave in. He barely allowed himself to breathe. The first hurdle was over, but the prison was still a labyrinth of locked doors and patrolling guards. Moving swiftly, he unlocked one door after another, making his way towards freedom. By the time the guards checked on his cell, they saw what appeared to be Shiratori sleeping under his blanket. Only in the morning did they realize they had been fooled. But freedom was short-lived. 3 days later, he was caught attempting to steal medical supplies from a hospital. He was immediately thrown back behind bars, this time with no chance of parole. Escape 2. After 6 years, with World War II raging across the world, Shiratori was transferred to Akita Prison, a place infamous for its cruel treatment of prisoners. The guards, knowing his history, showed him no mercy. They placed him in a specially designed high-security cell. The walls were smooth copper, impossible to grip. The ceiling was high above, with only a small skylight. His wrists were shackled day and night. An escape-proof prison? That's what they thought. With inhuman patience and observation, Shiratori studied his cell, looking for even the smallest weakness. Eventually, he found one: the wooden frame around the skylight. Due to the damp conditions, the wood had started to rot. Night after night, he worked on weakening the frame, pulling at it little by little, piece by piece. But there was still one problem. He needed to climb up. With his hands and feet pressed against the smooth copper walls, he spider-climbed his way up inch by inch until he reached the window. It took months. Then, on a stormy night, when the guards would be less likely to hear any movement, he finally made his move. With one last pull, the frame came loose and he slipped out into the darkness. For 3 months, he evaded capture. But then, something unexpected happened. One evening, the head prison guard Kobayashi heard a knock at his door. When he opened it, he found Yoshie Shiratori standing before him. He looked exhausted, starving, yet determined. "I didn't escape for freedom," he said. "I escaped because your guards tortured me. I want to surrender, but only if I can prove the corruption in your prison." Kobayashi had always been the only guard who treated him with some humanity. And so, Shiratori believed he could trust him. He was wrong. Kobayashi betrayed him, calling the police the moment Shiratori turned his back. And once again he was thrown behind bars, with an additional 3 years added to his sentence. Escape 3. This time he was sent to Abashiri Prison in Hokkaido, Japan's most notorious prison, where no one had ever escaped. The winters there were brutal. Temperatures inside the cells fell below freezing. Instead of giving him warm clothing, the guards left him to suffer in thin summer rags, believing that nature itself would break his spirit. But nature wasn't his enemy. It was his tool. This time, his escape plan was pure genius. Each day, when given his small bowl of soup, he would save a tiny portion. Not for food, but for his escape. At night, he would carefully pour it over his metal shackles and the cell bars. Why? Because the salt in the soup would corrode the metal over time. Months passed. Slowly, the rust built up. The metal weakened. And then, one night, the shackles broke. Now, the only thing standing between him and freedom was a small locked window. But by now, he had mastered the art of contortion. Carefully, he twisted and squeezed himself through the tiny opening, one limb at a time. By the time the guards checked his cell the next morning, it was empty. Shiratori had disappeared into thin air. For years, Shiratori remained a phantom, living in the shadows while Japan changed. World War II ended, and with it, the country itself was reborn. In the end, he was no longer hunted. He had outlasted the system that had tried to break him. And so, the man who had escaped Japan's most inescapable prisons 3 times vanished into history. Some prisons are made of walls and bars. But for a man like Yoshie Shiratori, true prison is the inability to fight for freedom. And that was our story for today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you love stories like this, you won't want to miss the true story of a man who robbed a bank 3 times, but lost everything in the dumbest way possible. Make sure to join our growing family on YouTube, subscribe, hit the like button, and turn on notifications so you never miss a story that will leave you speechless. Stay safe and see you in the next story.